In playing with and talking to a lot of golfers, one of the biggest pain points that so many of them have is distance control and overall confidence over those pretty tricky feel shots between 50 and say 80 to 90 yards. So in this video, I'm going to break down how I go about practicing these shots and how you can learn to really become more comfortable over these shots and dial in your numbers. So when we're talking about distance control, the difference between hitting a 50 and 80 yard pitch shot perhaps, a lot of golfers will turn to slowing down the swing, becoming more choppy, and that's never the answer. We want to keep a standard tempo, but just shorten up the golf swing. So that's what this exercise is all about. So right here, I'm working on some 50-yard golf shots. I'm working on the feel. This feel for me is a swing from hip height to hip height. Let me emphasize that that's a feel. When you look at these swings, you'll say, George, your hands are pretty well above hip height. I know, but in my mind, the feel is that's my hip height swing. This is the swing that's going to get me a 50-yard golf shot. Now do a couple practice motions aside from the ball, looking at your target, whatever you need to do to just get that shortened swing feel and make sure the tempo is the exact same. And then when you step over it, commit to your shot and hit a bunch of these over and over again if it's your first time doing it. You really want to focus on that swing feel. Between each time you strike the golf ball with your club, go back over that feel. Think hip height to hip height. There you see I'm looking back at the club, focusing it on having it at that comfortable distance. Again, we are shortening the swing. The tempo, the rhythm, the swing mechanics of the swing all stay the same. Now before I started filming this video, I took out my rangefinder and I shot different yardages. I shot 50, 65, and 80, which are the three shot motions and shot shapes that I'll be showing you. And I have balls out there that I know I can look at and say that's 50 yards deep. And that's the way that I'm evaluating these different yardages. And there's my last swing there with that 50-yard motion. So if you have a launch monitor, a flight scope perhaps, again, use code SGT15 for 15% off your flight scope, link in the top of the description. You can find out how far you're hitting the ball through a launch monitor, or you can just take out a rangefinder. Some driving ranges will have distances to each of the different colored flags. Those are the easiest ways that you can really dial in how hard or how far you're hitting your golf ball. Now I'm working on a slightly longer shot. This is about 65 yards, and what I'm really focusing on here is kind of not necessarily a shoulder height swing, but in my mind I'm thinking this should be halfway between my hip height and my shoulder swing. Again, that may not be what you're seeing on video. Oftentimes it isn't, but that's the feel that I have, and I can turn to it on the golf course. And I know that that type of golf swing is going to take me about 65 yards. Another thing to notice on all of these swings, a big issue many people have is they'll take the club back really short and then they'll have this big follow through, or perhaps the other way around. They'll take it back very far and then they'll really stab into the ball and the club won't really go that far past the ball. Try and make sure that how far you take that club back away in your backswing, say it's up to shoulder height, try and finish your golf swing at shoulder height. That's going to help you stay succinct and balanced throughout the motion, which is imperative for these types of shots, which are very tricky and require a lot of feel. So again, going through that same motion, working on the feels, going up, those rehearsal swings right before you hit the ball are very useful. And there's my last shot. These three shots were all struck very well. I had pretty good feel over these shots. And the reason that right now I have good feel is because I've worked on these pretty religiously. I know that I've spoken in previous videos about not wanting to get too redundant in your practice, but with things like this, where you're trying to dial in a particular yardage, I think it's pretty important too. Now the final swing, this is going to go about 80 yards for me. This is about a shoulder to shoulder swing. It's not necessarily a full swing where I'm super, really accelerating through the ball. With this club, it'll take me about 80 yards. For context here, this is my 55-degree wedge. It's my sand wedge. Full, it'll go about 110, maybe 105 yards, somewhere in that range. But with this swing, I'm trying to get the ball a little bit higher up in my stance. It's further towards my left foot as a right-handed golfer, and this ball will go higher than a normal shot. And because of that kind of high and soft landing trajectory, it won't go as far. So here I'm just focused shoulder to shoulder. And as you see, I kind of stick that follow through and it's still abbreviated. So I'm taking it back just slightly less than I would a full shot, but I'm really trying to drive down the ball in order to get the ball up in the air. And I'm also working on not having this big full follow through like I would on any normal shot. So again, getting that rehearsal, working on my swing plane after it, take it back to shoulder height, stop right around shoulder height. Again, when you look back at your golf swing and you look at your hip height or your shoulder height golf swings, they're almost never going to actually be hip or shoulder height, but this is a great way to really dial in these tricky distances. I found my performance on par 5s has been a lot better because when you think about par 5s, you don't always get home in 2, sometimes you have to lay up, and you'll often lay up to these numbers between 50 and say 90 yards. You need to know what to hit, how to hit it. This is a great way to get your practice in. Let me know if you have any questions or comments on these types of shots in the comment section down below. As always, thank you all very much for watching. Play well and take care.